And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good afternoon, and welcome to this breaking news installment of Cowboy State Politics and the Open Range Record. Not that long ago, we published an article on the Open Range Record detailing how Representative Carly Provenza and Representative Mike Yin, with the help of the Director of the Legislative Service Office, violated numerous parts of the joint rules of the Wyoming legislature in this whole check incident thing. Now, here's how it works out. So in the joint rules is a procedure for ethical complaints. And, you know, with everything in the Wyoming legislature, there's pretty much a procedure with it, and it's all in the rules. Now, it's important to remember that when the legislative session opens, the very first thing that happens is the rules get voted on. And often there are proposed changes to the rules, and they debate those a little bit. But in the end, really, before they can conduct any legislative business, they have to agree to pass the rules. You know, this year there was a rule a proposed rule that said that no cell phones on the floor. That failed. And then when all the proposed amendments were done, they voted on them. And that's how the legislature operates every single year. Now, there are House rules, there are Senate rules, and there are joint rules that both chambers operate on. And one of those is the process to file an ethical complaint. Over the last 4 or 5 days, and if you've looked at any news media outlet, you'll see that every one of them has printed multiple stories about the check incident that happened last week. And just to give you a quick rundown, so Monday, a picture was taken of my business partner, Rebecca Bextel, handing out a check on the House floor. Now, to be very, very clear, there is no rule that was violated with that. There's nothing in the House rules or the Senate rules or the joint rules that says after the close of business that somebody can't go on to the legislative floor. There's nothing in there that says you can't hand out a check. Now, I would still maintain that I don't think it's a really great look to do that, but there's no rules that were broken, and there are no Wyoming statutes that were broken. Now, as it relates to what happened Wednesday, which is when all of this came to a head, by the way, I have to ask myself a question, and perhaps you've asked it. You know, if this was such a pressing matter, and if Carly Provenza was so incensed by what she saw on Monday, why didn't she take her complaint to House leadership, to the Speaker of the House? Why did they wait until Wednesday, when a particular bill was brought up, to then lodge the complaint? Just a question to keep in mind. But here's the procedure for lodging a complaint on the floor of the legislature. And it's spelled out pretty easy, or pretty detailed. Here's what it is. And I'm quoting from the joint rules. Quote, "A complaint alleging legislative misconduct by a member of the House or the Senate shall meet the following criteria. 1, the complaint shall be in writing." That did not happen, which I'm going to tell you about in just a little bit. The complaint shall be based on unique personal knowledge, state detailed facts, specify the actions of the named member which form the basis of the complaint, attach all documentation on which the complaint is based, and identify how the specific alleged violation constitutes legislative misconduct. The complaint shall be signed by the person alleging the legislative misconduct. A copy of the complaint shall be provided to the member against whom the complaint is filed. The presiding officer, after consultation with the majority and minority floor leaders, the rules go on, but essentially, once the complaint is signed, it's taken to leadership, and then they deal with it. That did not happen in this case. In fact, the first time that the Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman, heard about this was on the floor of the House of Representatives. Now, Carly Provenza has already admitted that she violated the House rules, and let me tell you how we do that. We know that. An article that was published by the Cowboy State Daily quotes Provenza saying, and here we go, "I didn't send it to leadership because I think that this was an egregious violation of the public's trust, and I wasn't sure I trusted leadership to handle it appropriately," said Provenza. "And I think this was wise based on what we know now." Well, it's not wise because it completely violates everything that is in House rules. There is nothing in the joint rules not House rules, the joint rules. There is nothing in the joint rules that says you don't have to follow the procedure if you have feelings, or if you think you won't be paid attention to, or if you just don't want to. The rules are very clear. The complaint must be signed, and it has to be delivered to leadership. Now, let me tell you how Matt Obrick figures into this whole thing. Matt Obrick is the director of the Legislative Service Office. At no time did he tell the Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman, that he was working on a motion for the floor. He didn't consult with the Speaker of the House. He did it on his own. Now, also in the article that's published on the Open Range Record, Wyoming Statute 288105 lists the duties of the Legislative Service Office. Nowhere in there does it say that the director of the service office can operate independently of the legislature. In fact, the Legislative Service Office works at the behest of the legislature. So it's not really an independent agency, and Matt Obrick, the director, doesn't get to do whatever Matt Obrick wants to do. Now, this morning, I spoke with the Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman, and I asked him 6 questions, and they're really easy, and I'm going to go through the interview with you. First question to the Speaker of the House: did Representative Mike Yin or Carly Provenza approach you about their concerns of ethics violations of another member of the Wyoming House of Representatives? He replied, no. Second question: were you approached about an ethics complaint before a charge was leveled on the House floor concerning a check given out on the House floor? Speaker Nyman replied, no representatives approached me. No. Next question: was a signed complaint delivered to you before Wednesday, February 11th? That's the day that all of this started to happen. The Speaker Nyman says, no, I have not seen a signed complaint from anyone. Next question: did you approach Majority Floor Leader Scott Heiner and Minority Floor Leader Mike Yin about an ethics complaint prior to February 11th? Speaker Nyman replied, no, there was no documented ethics complaint to approach them with. Next question: did Representative Darren McCann, was Representative Darren McCann notified in writing by Management Council that an ethics complaint had been filed against him? Speaker Nyman says, not to my knowledge. I'm on Management Council, and I was never approached about any ethics complaint. And then the last question I asked the Speaker of the House: did Director of the Legislative Service Office, Matt Obrick, approach you with a written motion to be delivered on the floor of the House of Representatives? And Speaker Nyman replied, no, I have nothing from Director Obrick concerning a motion that would be delivered on the House floor. So Carly Provenza and Mike Yin did not approach legislative leadership with their ethics complaint. They didn't follow the procedure that is listed in the joint rules, and they didn't even attempt to follow it. In fact, what they did is they went to the press first. Now, there's a section in the House rules, and I find this one fascinating, but it specifically says why you follow the House rules, and let me read it to you. An ethics investigation instituted for the purposes of advancing political interests, not connected with intended legislation or any matters upon which the House should act, or instituted merely to subject a member of the House or Senate to public animadversion, that's a fun word, is not a proper legislative proceeding. And so what that tells you is that if it is found that Carly Provenza and Mike Yen violated the joint rules of the Wyoming legislature, then it is not a proper legislative procedure, no matter if the motion came before the body or not. It is very clear that the rules were not followed in this whole check incident. And so that pretty much does it for you, my friends. That details the article for you, as well as the interview I did with Speaker of the House, Chip Nyman. I'd encourage you to go to the Open Range Record and read it for yourself. It's very clear, and it's a very detailed article. I wrote it myself. But if you wouldn't mind a little bit of editorial comment on my part, kind of away from the facts a little bit, this entire thing was ginned up by Carly Provenza and Mike Yen, and they went to the media first. And the media ran with it without asking any questions. Was there actually a rule violation that happened? And the answer to that is no. There's nothing in the joint rules about what happened. Was there a law that was violated? No. There's nothing there. And yet, Carly Provenza went on the floor of the People's House, the House of Representatives, and made an allegation in contravention of the rules that she agreed to operate on. And so the last thing I will say on this is the only people that violated the rules of the House are Carly Provenza and Mike Yen, with the help of the director of the Legislative Service Office, Matt Obrecht. Now, we're going to stay on this story, and we're going to continue to follow it. I imagine I'll have a pretty interesting afternoon. But make sure that you ask questions, my friends. Don't take what the media tells you for granted, because in this case, most of them have printed multiple articles that are chock full of things that aren't true. Now, we're going to have subsequent stories on this, because I'm sure there will be some written about it. But for now, my friends, thank you for spending part of your lunch hour with me. And we'll be back tomorrow for Cowboy State Politics Live at 8 a.m. And don't miss the nightly roundup on the Open Range Record. I have no idea who the guests will be tonight, but I'm sure some people will be interested to talk. So for now, my friends, from the depths of the swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics and the Open Range Record. Have a good afternoon.